So like I said, today we are going to be going over Module 1, Project 1 demo. Pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through mini assignment 2. So I'm going to go out and find reference and inspiration images for my Project 1. I'm then going to come up with 3 different sketches and 3 different color palettes to go with those sketches. Then, because with that assignment you guys will peer review, we'll kind of take a vote in here of which one you think that I should pursue. I'll let you guys kind of peer review what I'm doing. We'll pick one and then I will open up Photoshop and go right into actually creating my logo. Now for this, I am kind of wanting you guys to stay simple unless you do already have the skill set to kind of branch out more and experiment more. But I'm okay with it being very, very simple. This is just kind of a get your feet wet module, getting used to Photoshop, moving stuff around, changing colors, while also kind of giving yourself something for the rest of the semester to sign your work with. All right, like we had talked about the different copyright and watermarking on the first day. So today you're going to be able to kind of create your own digital signature. So kind of going over Project 1, this personal branding, right? We talked about file formats. And remember, we talked about PNG being great because it has that transparent background. So you're not always having to cut out that white around your digital signature, around your logo. It's going to be able to save the transparent. And today I'm going to show you guys in Photoshop what that looks like. If you do save it as a JPEG, it will default to give you the white background, and I will demo that as well. Don't let me forget. So that you guys can see the difference between what a PNG would look like and what a JPEG would look like on your digital imaging. On your digital images, because I'm asking you guys to place it on a photograph or art created by you. It's fine if it's just a simple picture of your dog, your cat that's on your phone. Just to kind of get used to loading an image into Photoshop and then being able to digitally sign it and watermark it. I'm asking you guys to use it on like a letterhead, business card, or website. You can mock these up. Don't go out and make me an actual official business card. And I will go over how to do this as well. And then this is all going to be in one document. So you're going to separate, you're going to give me 2 separate files. I need one that's just your logo in a PNG, and then everything else can be saved out as a JPEG and put together in a Word doc. And I will go over all of that today as well. I'm going to need like a brief statement of kind of why you chose what you did. It's kind of okay if you stick a little bit simple with this because we haven't gone over artist statements just yet. If you said that my favorite color is blue, and for my personal branding, I thought it would be keep true to myself and stick with my favorite color, that's okay. All right. If you just say I did a circle because I really like circles, my favorite font is this, I like long walks on the beach, that's fine as well. Okay. But I need you to start reflecting on the design choices that you are making. So we will dive right into it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight for mini assignment 2. I'm going to go out, I'm going to Google. I think that I'm going to stick with my initials. I actually kind of go with MDS, so like Madeline Davis Studio. It's kind of my own personal brand. If you have, I don't know, Deadpool's Taco Truck Inc., if that's you, that's cool. If you want to make a logo for a company like that. Or if you want to keep it simple and stay with your initials, you don't have to, but that's fine as well. If you already kind of have like your own little design stuff, Fluffy Teddy Bears LLC, if that's you, that's cool. So you can make a fluffy teddy bear logo. This is for you. This is your own personal branding. So I'm kind of letting you guys have a lot of free, creative freedom with this, but with me, I like to stick with my brand, which is Madeline Davis Studios. So I'm going to look for simple logos that have initials. And I can do just that. I can go right into Google and I can search simple initial logo. Go to images. I spelled initial wrong, but that's okay. Thank you, autocorrect. So I can kind of look at these, and pretty quickly I can kind of tell you what stands out to me and what's kind of a style that I appreciate. Maybe not this B and D, because I don't have two letters that fit together like that, right? Kind of think about different letters and them as shapes, which is kind of goes back to your typography challenge, thinking of letters as shape and not legible text. So kind of coming through, trying to find some stuff. This one's interesting with an M, so I'm actually going to save this. I really like the simplicity of it with the text at the bottom. So I'm going to save this one. Coming through here, I really love the simplicity and the cursive of this one. It's really kind of different. It would be a really nice signature at the bottom of my work. So I will save this one as well. Trying to find different things that would, I do like the cursive of this one with the circle. This one is really, really nice as well. I kind of tend to gravitate towards circular shapes when I'm kind of designing logos, so I will actually save this one. So now I've come up with 3 very quickly, and as I talked about it, those could be those statements that I write with it. So I have now found, let me get them loaded back up, 3 different reference images. So this would essentially be my mini assignment 2. And I would come in here and I'd write a couple of sentences about what I like about each of these and how I would like to take different elements of these into creating my own logo. Now, for mini assignment 3, you can do this many different ways. It really just depends on you. If you really like going pen to paper, that's fine. Or if you kind of like going right into the program and experimenting, that is okay as well. Some of you guys might find that the designs that you created in mini assignment 1 were really kind of interesting, and you might want to bring them in as some of your sketches for this mini assignment 3, and that's fine as well. So I'm going to come right into Photoshop because that's how I like to work. I like to kind of start mocking things up, moving things around. I'm not really the best with pen and paper. So I'm going to come in, and just to get started, right when you open up Photoshop, it says new document, so you need a new blank canvas. You have a whole bunch of presets. I usually go for the print and letter. It's a really familiar size that I'm used to, that we all pretty used to. It's your basic piece of paper. So everything here looks good. I'm actually going to change it from portrait to landscape and create. So now I have a blank canvas. I can actually bring in, just by simply dragging, my 3 different sketches, not sketches, but my reference images, so I kind of have them nearby. As you see, when I add stuff in, there's a panel over here called layers, my layers panel, and you'll see that they're all in here stacked up on each other. So I can actually come over to the very top of my toolbar, or there's a shortcut on your keyboard, which is just the letter V, and that lets you access the Move tool. The Move tool lets you, with whatever you have selected in your layers, so the VM, which is this one right up top that we can see, with my Move tool selected and that layer selected, I can now move this layer around. Now, I do have my transform controls on, so if you don't see these little squares, you just would need to check this box right here. From there, I can scale. I can scale these down, I can move them along the top. So after you scale and move, you're going to need to commit to that transformation. Like that you moved it around, it looks good, so you can either press enter or go to the check box at the very top. So once you check, looks good, it's now in place and at the new size. So now I can come back over with still my Move tool selected to the next layer down, and same thing, I can scale it down, move it right up to the top, and then press enter. And then this one's already quite small, so I will just move it to the top. So now I have all of my references right there, so as I start sketching, I have them, I can see them, they're right in front of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go straight for my type tool, which is the T, type T. Photoshop's not super creative when it comes to, well, thankfully not super creative. Like the type tool isn't something that looks obscure. If you can remember type and T, you'll do good. And if you need to move, you've got the whole bunch of arrows, right? So once you start kind of catching on to what do I need to do, what would that symbol look like, you're probably going to be pretty close. So as we start going through these, I'll try to kind of remind you, hey, type tool T and move tool arrows, so that you can start kind of remembering these as well. So I'm going to go straight for my type tool. When I select it, you'll see the toolbar up here with all of my different options for controlling my fonts. And if you actually come right here at the end, it kind of looks like a folder with these lines. If you open it, this is where you can get to that kerning, tracking, leading. Remember all that stuff that we talked about with typography, with the space between the letters and everything. And that actually opens up your character panel, and that's where you would find that. So if you take these double arrows, it'll hide it again. So what I'm going to do first, right here at the top is where you actually control the color. So I'm going to set it to black so that I can see what I'm doing. Sometimes if you're like, I don't see anything, I'll ask, is it set to white? Is it set to black? So now I have it set to black, so we should all be able to see it. I'm going to click, and I'm actually going to make separate type layers for each letter so that I can kind of move them independently. So I typed the M, came up to the top, pressed the check mark, looks good. I'm going to click again, put a D, looks good. I'm going to put an S for Madeline Davis Studio. Looks good. So as you can see over here, my layers panel is starting to get really, really busy, right? You can see my M layer, my D, and the S, and then all of this stuff for my references. It is important to make sure that you don't, because there is an option to merge everything and flatten it, to not do that. That's actually called destructive editing, and you want to edit non-destructively, right? You don't want to destroy your data, your stuff you're working on. You want to keep it so you can come back and edit it later. So what you can actually do is select one layer, hold shift, select the top layer. So see how it selects all of those at once. And you can come down to this little option at the bottom of your layers panel, and it looks like a folder, and it'll create a group. So it puts everything nice and neatly in a folder, just like if you have a whole bunch of files on your desktop, you can put them all in a folder and still access them, same kind of thing. So I can actually come over and drop this down, and there's all of those layers, so it doesn't get too crowded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the M layer. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to see if I have any fonts that are in here that kind of have that hand swirl, kind of cursive-y look. I have one right here that I actually got from that site Defont. If you're not familiar, it has a whole bunch of different cool stuff. So even if you're looking for reference and inspiration, and you're not exactly looking for logos because you have an idea in your head, I'm okay with you coming onto Defont and looking up different fonts. This one's really nice as well. And finding one there to use kind of for your own signature. So you could actually type in, so if I come to Curly, for example, and I typed in MDS, so I can kind of have an idea of what this would look like. I'm fine with that as well if you wanted to kind of come on here and find different fonts that inspire you, as well as, because that can also be references. Make sure that before you download that you do read, this one says it is free for personal use, that you do make sure, we haven't gone over copyright just yet with all that stuff, or we have a little bit, but not really dove too deep into it. But you always want to make sure that you do read to make sure that you can use this, because you might actually have to say, hey, I got this font from this individual. Like they might ask for an attribution. So that's where in that document that you're going to submit everything for project one, that you would say font for this logo was this artist that I acquired from defont.com. So always make sure that you do read that it is free for you to use. It's okay. You know, you don't have to make any attribution or anything. And if you do, you do give credit where it's deserved. So this font is called Boulevard. Sometimes if you highlight a font, this is kind of a fun trick. If it has any kind of extra swirls or serifs or anything, if you highlight it and hover, you'll see that now I have like 2 different variations of this M. Let me make this really big so you guys can see it. A lot bigger than that. 500. There we go. And I'll go back to my move tool so I can see. So it's actually a really nice M, and it does kind of fit with everything else, that style that I'm kind of looking at. Let me actually go back to my text tool, highlight it, and I'm going to take it back down to maybe 300 so we can work with it. So now I'm going to kind of move it around. I can go back to my D tool, my D layer with the move tool selected and move it next to it. So from here, I can continue doing pretty much that step again, right? I can go to my text tool, highlight the D, go to Boulevard. I don't know if I'm going to add another kind of serif, like another detail to that D, because it would start to conflict with that M and it would start looking too busy. What I might actually do is come back to the M layer, add the D, but I actually think I want them to touch. So from here I can do 2 things. I can go back and have the D as its own separate layer and be able to have a little bit more control and manually move it around. Or 2, I can go into the kerning. Remember the kerning in the character panel? That would let me move these 2 letters together. So I'm actually going to hide, and to do that, hide the D and the S layer. All you have to do is poke the eyeball out, right? If you poke somebody in the eyeball, they're not going to be able to see. So if you poke the eyeball in your layers panel, it will hide those layers and not delete them, so I can bring them back. So I'm going to highlight these letters, and I'm going to go back up here. It has my type tool selected. I'm going to open up the character panel, and I'm going to go right here. If you see the one that has the V/A, that's going to be the kerning, which is between those 2 specific characters. Now when I drop that down, oh nice, you're going to force me to go to the tracking. That's okay. Sometimes Photoshop likes to be Photoshop, especially if you have a font that you downloaded from online. It'll sometimes have these weird quirks. So I'm going to actually go right over to the tracking, which is the overall anyways, and I only have 2 letters, so it's okay. So if you drop this down, you'll see that you've got negative and positive. If you go towards the negative, it's going to subtract from that space, so it's going to get things really tight. If you go positive, it's going to move it further away. So if I went negative 25, it's doing baby steps. That's nice. There we go. Negative 100, I now have it touching. What I can do, again, same thing. If I didn't want to mess with the tracking and all of that, I could go manually and go back into the layer here, that is the D, change it to Boulevard. I think I have the font set to 300. Use my move tool and get the same effect by moving it where I would want it to be. That's going to come down to preference, whatever that you feel like you want to try. If you want to start messing with the kerning and the tracking and all of that into the character panel and explore more of the character panel, that's fine. If you want to just move it with the move tool and have 2 separate layers for your letters, that's fine as well. As for the sketching phase, because that's kind of what we're in right now, right? We're trying different things, seeing what's happening. I could stop right here, screenshot this, and say this is one of my sketches. That would be fine. Do you think the D here needs to be a little bit bigger? Do you think that the M, because I'm going to have you guys ask questions to your peers about some of the designs that you've created. So that could be a couple of questions here is like, do you think that the D should be a little bit larger because the M is kind of overpowering, right? So it's going back to balance and everything. So you would create about 3 to 5 of these kind of sketches and then going and finding color palettes. Remember, I did recommend coolers.co to kind of generate, or not co. We'll look at coolers. What was that one called? COOLOR. Coolers.co. So, yeah, thank you. This is a generator that kind of generates different color palettes. I tend to kind of gravitate, actually, luckily this comes right up towards these kind of blues, so I can lock this one. Spacebar. I actually really like these 3 right here at the end. So what I can do is I can do a screenshot. Make sure that you get those numbers at the bottom, and I'll show you in just a moment how to use those in Photoshop and adding shapes. So I can take that screenshot. Gonna minimize it here. Let me find it. I'm actually gonna go a different way. I can actually file, place embedded. Find that screenshot of my color palette and place it into my workspace. So now you'll see that it's added as a layer. I'll move it up top with my move tool. I'm going to scale it down. So I'm kind of like creating like a mood board, right? Of all my kind of different inspiration as I work. So with these colors selected, if I'm really kind of leaning towards this color palette, I'm asking you guys to find 3 different ones that might work with these designs, but you might find out that just a simple black and white design works well for you, and that's fine. Try to kind of limit your color palette. I think that my max is 4 for you guys. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move towards making a final logo with this color palette. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hide my references. I think I'm going to stick with something like this sketch here. I'm going to actually come back and remove that D. I prefer to kind of be able to manually come in and move my shapes around. So I'm going to come here, highlight this one. Do we have more options? It does not seem so. Check mark. I'm going to move this back into place. I'm going to hide my screenshot of my colors so I can kind of get my design down. I'm actually going to scale the D up just a little bit. Be careful that you don't, when you are scaling, that you don't let it get distorted. Have you ever seen like somebody's done like a logo and it looks stretched and it just doesn't, you can tell that somebody didn't keep it with proportions, right? It looks smushed or long. So always try to be mindful of that. Luckily, if you have the latest version of Photoshop, you don't have to hold shift anymore to maintain the proportions. But if you have an older one, holding shift while you scale would let you maintain the proportions. So this is looking nice. I'm really happy kind of with this. I might actually take off that kind of fancy swirl because it's really weighted heavy to the left, right? Do you see that? Like the visual weight, it's really heavy towards the M. So I'm just going to highlight that M and go back to my normal. So now I can actually select both layers by holding Shift, and I can move them all at once. Now, if we go back and we look at my references, I think I'm going to bring in this circle aspect. I really, really like it. I might actually be able to kind of connect it with these points. We'll give it a shot. Again, this is still kind of sketching, right? So I could put this as one sketch with or without the circle, and then I could have a third sketch with including some of the color. So let me turn this off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start introducing shapes. If you come over here, you see the type tool, a white cursor, which is your direct selection tool, which you'll get really familiar with that this semester, I promise. But we're going to actually go to the rectangle tool. Most Photoshops will default with the rectangle tool being the primary shape tool that you see. But if you click and hold, you get all of your other options. You get the rounded rectangle, the ellipse, the polygon, the line, and a custom shape tool. If you go to your custom shape tool, up at the top, you'll see where it says shape, and if you drop that down, you've got all of these different shapes that Photoshop has for you. What's really great is that there are artists out there on kind of like the Creative Commons and everything that have made shapes that you can download and install into your Photoshop. So if it's not right here, you could probably Google whatever shape you're looking for and say Photoshop shape and find a file, and usually they'll have a set of instructions on how to install that shape. But they really do have a lot here. But again, I'm just going to stick with the ellipse tool, and you can see I have the fill and stroke options. The stroke is going to be like a line that traces the outside, and the fill is going to be just making it a solid color. So I'm actually going to turn the stroke off by selecting that box and going to the white with the red line, and I'm going to select a fill. Now they have all of these colors here, but I'm wanting to use one of these. So you see these numbers, and this is where these come in. I'm going to go to my shape tool, my fill. Right here is your color picker. It kind of has this crazy gradient look. You can do gradients here, and that's going to be this option right here with the gradient, but the gray and black gradient. If you click the color, it opens up your color picker. So let me cancel this and go back to the screen. Right down here is where you can type in these numbers. If not, if you feel like, oh no, I forgot to grab the numbers, it's okay. With your color picker, you get an eyedropper. Can you guys see the eyedropper? I know it's very, very small. I can come down. I think I'm going to select this blue and click that color, and it finds it for you. If you're running into some issues where like, oh, it's getting close, but it's not exactly the color, you might have web colors selected, and it would look like this. So all you would need to do is just check off only web colors, find it again, and you'll be good to go. So press OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here, and I'm just going to draw this shape. Click and drag. And when I release it, I've now got a filled in blue circle oval. Now it's on top of everything, and this is where layer management is going to come into play. This is going to be very light layer management. Throughout the semester, you're going to get a lot more familiar with layer management, especially as we move into photo composites and vector art. Vector art it's kind of funny because some people will give me how many layers they have, and it's sometimes upwards in the hundreds. So this is very baby steps into getting you guys used to layer management and keeping in mind what's on top of where, and where in your cake is your chocolate layer, where in your cake is your vanilla layer, and where's the icing. So I need to actually move this layer in my layers panel below the M and the D. I'm going to hide this color palette again, and I'm going to go to my move tool. So now if I'm back with my move tool, I can scale and kind of distort this shape to fit, because I'm kind of trying to get that look where it looks like it's kind of being completed with the text. So this, I could stop right here, and this could be a sketch as well, right? Kind of think, if you're one of those people that kind of like diving right in, think about the different stops. Could I stop here? Could this be a good logo design at this point? All right, so you could always stop, save it as a JPEG right here, or take a screenshot, and that could be one of your sketches. So as you're working towards a final product, you could always stop yourself at a certain point, screenshot it, and throw it in a Word document and kind of get an opinion of your peers. Because you might start to overwork something, and people might say, oh, I really liked when it was super simple, 2 colors. So it kind of keeps you grounded, and I think it is important to get opinions from your peers. So I could stop here. Another thing that I'm actually going to try, kind of still bouncing back and forth between the final product and sketching layers, I'm going to go back to my shape tool, my ellipse tool, with that layer selected, and I have all of the options up at the top. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what it looks like with a black stroke and not a fill. So I'm going to select one of my recently used colors, because I just changed my text to black, so it's right there. I'm going to turn off the fill, and now right here, right next to the stroke, is your weight of your stroke. So I'm going to bump this up a little bit so it kind of matches this weight as well. I might need to come back over to my move tool, move that out a little bit. Might need to do it a little bit more. I'll zoom in, get a little bit up close and personal. Just looks like that might overhang just enough. So this could be one as well. And if we turn back on my sketches, it is starting to kind of get those looks, right? I kind of have the combination, that like that V and the M, right? They're kind of blending together. I have that circle from that A and the AHS one on the far right. But one thing I want to pull from that very first one is I think that it is kind of hard to read the M and the D. And I want it to kind of maybe know that this is Madeline Davis Studio. So what I could do is I can try different fonts that might pair with the Boulevard, because I think that this Boulevard font, remember we were talking about the difference between display and the serif and the sans serif, and they all have really good different purposes. This Boulevard font probably isn't great for lots of text, right? Because Madeline Davis Studio is pretty long. So I think that what I'm going to do, turning off my references, I'm going to come back over to my type tool. Boulevard's already selected. I'm going to take that back down because it still remembers 300 points. So I'm going to set it back to 72. And I'm just going to type Madeline Davis Studio, and it still remembers, because Photoshop, as you're working, will remember your last settings. So I'm going to open back up the character panel, and I'm going to set the tracking back to 0. So now it's spaced out as the designer of the font wanted it to be. Come back to the check mark. Yes, looks good. Move tool. You know, that's not too bad. It still is legible. I was worried about it, but something to keep in mind is that your logo might not always stand alone by itself on a nice white background. And that's why I'm also having you guys try it out on different photographs and different works of art and different uses, because it might look great at this size, but as we get smaller, that Madeline Davis Studio gets harder and harder to read. So what I'm probably going to pair it with, I'm going to come back, highlight this text. Gill Sands is not bad, but maybe not a heavier weight. I might go with a light. That I think pairs well together. I could stop right here. I could submit this as one of my sketches as well. Saying, you know, how do you feel about these font pairings? And then from here, if everything looks good, I can turn off this background. So now everything we've been building has been on this white background. See this lock? When you first create a brand new canvas, a brand new document in Photoshop, it's going to default lock a white background. All you need to do is come back to the very bottom and you'll see where it even creates background and you can see the white. You just click the lock. It now then creates that background layer into layer 0 and you can just poke the little eyeball, and when you see these checkered, like the gray boxes, that is transparent, that is clear. So if I come up to the top and I say File, Save As, MD, Logo, PNG, Save. Medium is fine. I now have a PNG of this logo with a transparent background, so it's ready for me to put on anything. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to save it also, MD logo 1, as a JPEG. You will actually see, and if you pay attention really closely, the flash of white because it is putting a white background into your file. So now I have a completed logo saved in a PNG format. That is part 1 of your project 1. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a photograph in Photoshop and apply that PNG logo. So I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to find some picture that I have, photos. We'll use the one of me and my dog. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. You can just drag it straight in, and that's fine as well. Or you can go to File, Place Embedded, Save to my desktop, PNG, Place. So see how it has the transparent background? Which is really, really nice. Now, I may need to save this with multiple colors. So I might need to go back and maybe make a black and white version so that if it is being used on a darker background, that I do have a white version of my logo. To do that, I can actually come back in here and select my text layer of Madeline Davis Studio, highlight it, select the white, select the D and the M. I can actually select both of them at the same time because they do have the same properties. Come back up to the top, change it to white, go to my circle, come down to the shape, right, the ellipse tool. Now I have the properties up top, select white, File, Save As, MD logo white. So now I can actually come over to my desktop. This is the other way you can do it, and just drag it and place it right into your photograph. So now if I wanted to, I could probably put it somewhere where somebody couldn't crop it out, but it's not competing with the photograph. Okay. So it's always good sometimes to have it in two different variations for these reasons. So maybe a darker color and a lighter color. So if you're putting it on something darker, it'll stand out. And then if you have something lighter, it doesn't get lost. So I'm actually going to pull in this JPEG of my logo. See how it adds in the white box? That's a no-go. You don't want to try to fight that all the time of trying to crop out that white box and get rid of it and erase it and then just kind of gradually destructively edit your logo over and over. So that's why it's really great to have everything saved as the PNG with the transparent background. So once you have your logo on your image, you would file, save as. I'm going to call this one, I'm going to save it to my desktop, MD logo dash project 1 photo. Save it as a JPEG. And that's another part of what I'm asking you guys to do. Okay? So for the next part, I'm having you guys do it on like a letterhead or a business card. You can do that in two different ways. You can create a file, new, print. I believe they have it, maybe not. Over here you can actually set your own custom. I think the width of a business card is 3 by 2.5, right? I think that's about the size of a business card. Make sure that you have the orientation set to whatever you would like it to be and create. Looks a little off, it's all right. But creating a new document and pretty much designing kind of your own business card. So if I had my logo here, I think if it was the right size, it'd be a little bit better, but I'm kind of going off the top of my head. Come to my text tool. Oh, it's set to white. See, that's why you couldn't see it. Set to black. And it's still set to 300. That would make sense as well. Having issues with this now. Well, this is nice. Oh, it's still set to 300. Okay. All right, here we go. Highlight it because I know you guys can't see it. Set this to black. And then from here, I could just design my own business card this route, right? Like by putting my name. You could put your UCF email. You don't have to put your phone number, but just kind of mocking up what would your logo look like on a business card. This is where I'm also okay with you going out and finding a mock-up, a Photoshop mock-up of a business card and doing that as well and actually seeing what your work could look like if it was actually maybe in somebody's hand. It depends on the mock-up you find. And then from there, you would just save it as a JPEG, and that would be also what you would include in that document. I'm actually going to just finish this out as well just to have that so I can show you guys what a completed document would look like. And I had that set to light. All right, so file, save as, MD project 1, busy. Save it as a JPEG. Great. And then the last thing I had you guys do, so I had you put it on the art. I had you create a mock-up. Then I'm going to ask for what colors you use in a brief statement. I believe that's all that I'm asking for you guys for that one. Yes. So going in, I use Pages if you use Word. That's fine as well. But I'm going to come in and create this document now with all of my different elements. So I'm going to say my name, project 1, and then that's where I can drag in my logo as a PNG. Now keep in mind, I need to also have it as a separate file PNG so I can see that you saved it with the transparent background. I would like it in this document as well, just so I can kind of appreciate it again, standalone. But I will need 2 separate files, one that is this document and one that is just the standalone PNG of your logo, okay? So I'm going to just scale this down. I'm going to bring in my photo, and I can bring in my business card. Insert section. So that I can see that you're understanding how to open up photographs and starting to manipulate them in Photoshop by adding your logo. I can see that you have successfully created a PNG image and understand the difference of those file types. You're getting used to adding text, changing colors, moving things around, and you are practicing those basic balance and unity and all of those different elements. And that's really the key takeaways that I would like you guys to have with this project. But this is where I would come in at the bottom of this document here. Let me move this up so I can type. This is where I could write my brief statement. If I need to give credit for any of the fonts used, this is where you would do it. And this is also where I would indicate that for my logo, I just used black and white, and that's fine. But if you get a little bit crazy with your colors, that's also within this document that you would specify that as well. So I'm looking for this document and a PNG version of your logo. And that's all I am looking for project 1. It's been almost an hour since I've started this, and I have gone through all of the different mini assignment 2, mini assignment 3, and project 1. So it shouldn't take too much of your time to complete all of these, but everybody's going to also have their own workflow, like how I kind of actively sketched as I worked towards a final product. If you're more of the type where you're going to come in with your pen and paper and hand draw some stuff, you can bring those images into Photoshop, right? Like just how I brought in this picture of my dog and how I brought in my own references. And if you wanted to kind of use them as a guide, that's fine as well. So everybody's going to just have their own flow, and that's okay.